Well, everyone, the iPhone 5C came out many years ago. And what's funny is this was actually an iPhone that I remember coming out, and it was honestly a pretty decent iPhone. It wasn't the first iPhone I would recommend everyone to buy, but at a time in 2013 when this iPhone came out, I remember like it was yesterday. There was, so much talk about the specific iPhone, mostly because it was that cheaper model. Whenever Apple makes a cheap model of an iPhone, I think it does pretty decently well. And this was the first time Apple actually tried to go ahead and make a cheap iPhone that was specifically made to be a cheap iPhone. This was not supposed to be like the most expensive iPhone of all time. And that was something that was very interesting. And I love this approach from Apple. Now, I don't think the iPhone 5C was the iPhone to kind of showcase, hey guys, like this is the iPhone to go ahead and buy in this case. But I think it did start off that way, and I think that in and of itself is actually a pretty cool thing. Now, if you want to pick up some iPhones, I would recommend this year. Links will be down in the description. You can get them from there, and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the iPhone 5C, the front of this iPhone looked almost identical to the iPhone 5, which this iPhone was pretty much kind of stemming from. So with this type of iPhone, it had a 4-inch IPS LCD panel on the front. It was 640p by 1136, so the resolution was also fairly decent, and I think this was a pretty good idea from Apple. They went ahead, they were able to focus in on this specific device, and they kind of stole the same body as before, which is totally fine. I'm totally okay with that. But when you consider everything else with this phone, I just don't think it really made sense for even people to buy this phone at all. Now, you didn't even have Touch ID on this phone, which was kind of the big feature of the 5S, which came out the exact same time as this iPhone, which is honestly pretty insane. We had the lightning port at the bottom, we had a headphone jack as well, and on the back, we had this plastic back. Now, this was the biggest thing going on with this specific phone, and this was the main reason why people would look at this device and be like, you know what, like, I don't know if this would be the phone for me, and, I guess they were trying to say that the C stood for color or something like that, and I really don't think this was the right move from Apple. I think the best thing Apple could have done was pretty much give it the same body as the iPhone 5 and then keep Touch ID on it. That way people could go for the iPhone 5S, which was faster and had Touch ID. That was a pretty big visual change, but there wasn't really even a big point of having something like the 5C because it was the same exact phone as the iPhone 5. In fact, it was a worse phone than the iPhone 5 because it had a plastic back rather than an actual premium back that the back of the iPhone 5 had. So that was another very weird thing going on with this specific phone. And when I look at this iPhone at that moment, I feel like Apple could have done a little bit of a better job, but they didn't have too much experience in that cheap market. So I think that kind of makes a little bit sense there, if I'm being honest. So from that perspective, I guess that kind of covers it up there. Now moving on to that camera side of things. So this iPhone pretty much, like I said, had the same exact camera setup as the iPhone 5 as well. So on the back, it had an 8 megapixel camera, a single standard lens, and on the front, it had a 1.2 megapixel camera. Now you could shoot 1080p video on the back and you can do 720p video on the front. And that was pretty much it. This was not a super capable camera like in these days. But at that moment, back in 2013, this was one of the best cameras you could probably buy on a phone, at least from an iPhone. This was only one generation behind, and that was actually a pretty insane thing. When you consider how far cameras have gotten, it's actually pretty incredible that we've gotten at this stage, at this point. Now, with the iPhone 5C, this is definitely not a camera I'm trying to go and pick up nowadays. I mean, it's a very, very, very average camera, and it kind of goes to show you how far we've gone in that camera department. I mean, now even like our budget, like our iPhone SE3, that's technically the cheapest phone, like that phone has a way better camera than this thing, and I would rather use that camera all day than this specific phone. So I love to use this iPhone as a, kind of showcase of like, well, yeah, this camera wasn't that great on this iPhone, but look how far we've come. Like, we've come such a long way for this iPhone to technically be like an old, obsolete iPhone. The camera's not that good, but I mean, look how good we are now. I think that's kind of a takeaway from this specific camera. So from that perspective, I think that kind of covers it up there as well. Now moving on to the software and the longevity portion, this iPhone clearly is not supported with software anymore, and I think basically all of us know this by now. With something like the iPhone 5C, this was a phone that came out in 2013. It had the same internals pretty much as the iPhone 5. So when we kind of consider that, I mean, this specific iPhone, again, it got discontinued many years ago on iOS 10. So I think iOS 10 got discontinued in like 2017. So it's been it's been so many years since this iPhone has even seen an update. I think it randomly got an update like 3 or 4 years ago, and that was kind of a big deal. But since then, no updates on this iPhone, which again is totally fine. So this is going to be the main reason why I wouldn't recommend anybody to buy this iPhone. If you want to go and buy it as a collector's item or as something else, then go for it. But this is not an iPhone I would look at and recommend people to buy because it is severely outdated, it is severely unsafe to own, and it makes zero sense to go ahead and own an iPhone like this as of this point. So from that perspective, I mean, that kind of covers it up there. It's not really too much to hit on in that software perspective. Now, hitting on the internal, specifically with the performance, this iPhone has that Apple A6 chip inside of it with 1 gigabyte of RAM. Now, like I said, this was recycling basically the same thing as the iPhone 5. So however fast the iPhone 5 was exactly how the 5C was. Now, nowadays, I mean, that's not a fast phone. I mean, this is a very slow phone now. It has 1 gigabyte of RAM, which is insane. But when you consider everything kind of wrapped into one, this phone that came out in 2013, which was a cheaper phone than what the 5S was, I mean, it had the same internals. It was the same speed pretty much as the previous year's flagship. So I think from when you think about it like that, I think that is a very interesting approach. And Apple's basically done the same thing year after year after year. So if we didn't have the iPhone 5C, we would have probably never gotten the first iPhone SE, would have probably never gotten this cheaper model of iPhones that Apple's probably going to end up making. So I do attribute the iPhone 5C to a lot of the success of Apple's lineup in general, because it kind of showcased to them that, if you have a good, cheap phone, well, you can sell a lot of phones like that. And I think the 5C was their step in that direction. Now with the 5C, you are still getting, I guess, an okay performing phone for a 2013 device. Like, considering this phone is 10 years old right now, I guess it's kind of understandable. Like, okay, like this is not like the, main phone that's came out this year. I mean, this one came out 10 years ago. So it's kind of understandable from that perspective. But I mean, even that, I mean, this is not a fast phone. 90% of applications you can't even download on this thing anymore. So it makes even less sense to go and buy a phone like this, in my opinion. So from that perspective, that kind of covers it up there as well. And to kind of sum up this video, what I'll definitely tell you is that the iPhone 5C is really not worth buying anymore at all. I mean, if you want to buy it as a collector's item or something along those lines, then by all means go for it. But this is not a phone I would recommend people to buy. It's not even a phone I would recommend people to think about buying. I mean, this phone is severely outdated. It's unsafe to own. The applications, you can't really even get many applications on this thing anyway. So it's just going to be almost like a brick as soon as you buy it. The best phone you can buy right now, if you wanted the cheapest one that I would even recommend, is probably an iPhone 10. That phone came out 4 years after this phone in 2017. And that one would make a lot more sense to buy. And if you can go even higher than that, then by all means keep going. Get an iPhone 10s, get an iPhone 11, whichever one you can afford on top of that. But the base model should be an iPhone that, is still supported with software. The 5C is not supported with software. It's been outdated for many years now, and it makes zero sense to go and buy an iPhone like that. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.